I am 87 years old, and if you were to walk into my living room right now and ask me what the heaviest object in this entire house is, I wouldn't point to the massive solid oak dining table that took 3 grown men to carry through the front door. I wouldn't tell you it's the antique cast iron radiator hissing in the hallway. I would point my finger right here. I would point directly to this little rectangular piece of coal black glass sitting right on my coffee table. It weighs exactly 6 ounces. I know because I weighed it once just to see, but some days, some mornings when the house is too quiet, I simply cannot find the physical strength in my arms to lift it because that little device hasn't buzzed, it hasn't chimed, it hasn't vibrated or made a single solitary sound in exactly 114 days. People think an explosion is loud. People think thunder is loud. But let me tell you, the loudest sound in the entire world is silence. It is the deafening, suffocating, bone-rattling roar of a phone that simply refuses to ring. You know exactly the kind of silence I am talking about. It's the kind of quiet that settles into the corners of the ceiling and makes the air in the room feel as thick as molasses. I raised 3 children in this very house. I remember the sleepless nights pacing the worn pine floorboards of the nursery at 3 in the morning. I remember the sour smell of spit up on my flannel shoulder and the endless, exhausting cycle of changing those diapers when my eyes were practically swollen shut from fatigue. Let me take you back to a freezing Tuesday evening in November of 1982. I was a structural engineer working down in the Chicago Loop. I can still vividly remember the sharp, stinging smell of the ammonia from the blueprint paper burning the back of my throat. I remember the bitter, metallic taste of day-old coffee from a styrofoam cup because I was working 70-hour weeks just so I could pay the tuition for those incredibly fancy out-of-state universities they just had to attend. I stood in the freezing, sleet-covered metal bleachers during those late November high school football games. The wind coming off Lake Michigan would cut right through my wool coat. My hands would be entirely, completely numb, but I stood there screaming until my throat tasted like copper just to cheer for them. I gave them the absolute best years of my youth. I gave them the very strength of my spine. I sacrificed my posture entirely, working hunched over slanted drafting tables until my lower back screamed in agony, and I completely ruined both of my knees walking those concrete job sites. God above in heaven knows that I poured every single dime I ever earned into making absolutely sure they never had to feel the sting of poverty. I built a rock-solid, reinforced steel foundation for them just so they could spread their wings and fly away. And now I am 87 years old. I'm sitting in a 4-bedroom house that echoes when I clear my throat. And I consider myself incredibly lucky. I mean, truly, profoundly lucky if I manage to get a single sterile text message on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas, Dad. That is the entirety of it. 4 words. No phone call, no picture of the grandkids opening presents, no warmth. Just a digital blip on a screen. That is the grand final paycheck I have to show for an entire lifetime of unconditional, back-breaking, sweat-soaked love. Now, You are sitting there right now watching the screen, and I know exactly what is twisting up inside your stomach like a wet 12, because you feel it too. You are sitting entirely alone in a quiet, immaculate house. You are listening to the low mechanical hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, just staring blankly at the floral wallpaper. And you are constantly wondering, what in the world did I do wrong? Where did I fail? You think about all the sacrifices, the missed vacations, the worn out shoes you kept wearing so they could have new ones. And it just doesn't make any mathematical sense to you. So you give in to the desperate gnawing urge. You pick up that unbelievably heavy piece of black glass. You dial the 10 numbers you have had memorized perfectly since 1998. You hold the speaker to your ear. You listen to the first ring. It sounds so hopeful. Then the second ring. Then the third. And then the click. You get the automated, soulless voicemail. You force a bright, falsely cheerful tone into your voice. You swallow the lump in your throat, trying desperately to hide the shaking in your breath. And you leave a message. Hey, sweetheart. Hey, buddy. It's just your dad, just checking in on you to see how the new job is going. No rush, but give your old man a call back when you get a second. Love you. And then you press end and you wait. You wait through the morning news broadcast, watching the ticker run across the bottom of the screen without really reading it. You wait through the long, agonizing afternoon as the shadows from the oak tree outside creep slowly across the living room rug. You wait until the streetlights outside hum and flicker on, casting an orange glow through the blinds. And absolutely nothing. The screen stays black. Well, I need you to listen to me very, very closely today. I am going to tell you something that is probably going to sting like alcohol on an open cut, but it is the absolute unvarnished truth. You need to stop calling them. Put that heavy piece of glass down on the table right this second. Take your hand away from it. Do not let yourself dial that number again. Do not leave another desperate, rambling voicemail into the void. Do not type out another long, emotional text message practically begging on your digital knees for a tiny crumb of their attention. They packed their bags, they got in their cars, they moved on, and they left you. Yes, it is a bitter, jagged pill to swallow, but they did. And if you keep relentlessly chasing after grown adults who are actively lacing up their shoes to run away from you, you are going to lose the very last precious thing you have left in this world, your dignity. So let me tell you exactly what you are going to do instead, starting the very moment this video fades to black. I'm going to give you the hard, necessary truth. First things first, we have to pull up a chair and honestly talk about why you keep calling them week after week. You are terrified. I know that feeling intimately. It sits right in the center of your chest like a stone. You are scared completely out of your mind that if you stop making all the effort, if you stop reaching out, they are just going to disappear into thin air. You think to yourself, if I don't text them, if I don't send the $20 bills in the birthday cards, poof, they are gone forever. You have convinced yourself that if you do not constantly wave your arms and remind them that you are still drawing breath, they are going to completely forget that old Vernon even exists on this earth. Well, I need you to lean in and listen to me. If you have to actually go out of your way to remind your own flesh and blood child that you exist, they have already forgotten you. Yeah, I know. That feels like a physical punch right to the gut. But constantly begging for their love, constantly asking for a sliver of their time, let me tell you something about that. That ain't love. That is pity. And I don't know about the kind of life you have lived, but I am a grown, prideful man. I worked for 40 brutal years managing high-rise construction crews in the freezing rain. I have walked across steel I-beams suspended 50 stories in the air. I have survived things that would break the spirit of most ordinary folks. I am absolutely not going to sit here in my twilight years and accept cold scraps of pity from the very same people I used to spoon-feed mashed peas to. No, sir, absolutely not. Think about how it sounds on their end of the line. When you call them 5 times a week, sounding fragile, sounding profoundly sad, sounding incredibly lonely. Do you know what you are actually doing? You are actively teaching them that you are a burden. You are demonstrating to them in real time that you ain't got no life of your own anymore. You are showing them that your entire existence consists of just sitting by the front window, staring at the driveway like an old, forgotten hound dog, hoping the master finally comes home. And let me tell you a secret about human nature. Folks run from that kind of desperate energy. They absolutely sprint away from that heavy, suffocating neediness, even if it is their own father or mother. To them, your phone calls don't feel like affection anymore. They feel like intense, crushing pressure. It feels like an unpaid debt. So what do? They pull back. They screen the call. They say they are too busy. And when they pull back, you panic. Your heart rate goes up and you chase even harder, which of course only makes them run away even faster. You have got to stop this bleeding today. Right now, at this very second, the desperate chasing completely ends. Step 1 of taking your remaining years back. You have got to absolutely kill that toxic parental guilt. I know exactly what you do at 2:30 in the morning. I've been there. You lay there wide awake and the sheets tangled around your legs, staring up at the slow spin of the ceiling fan. You endlessly replay the old, worn-out VHS tapes in your head. You torture yourself with the ghosts of the past. Maybe I was too hard on my oldest boy when he brought home that report card. Maybe I spent way too many weekends at the architectural firm when I should have been sitting in the bleachers at the baseball diamond. Maybe I didn't hug my daughter enough when she was going through that rough patch in high school. Look at me. Look right into my eyes. There ain't no such thing as a perfect parent on this green earth. I certainly wasn't perfect. Lord knows I made a mountain of mistakes, plenty of them. I lost my temper. I said things I shouldn't have said. But here is the undeniable bedrock fact. I was there. I didn't run off when the bills piled up on the kitchen counter. I put hot, nutritious meat and potatoes on that dining table every single night. I worked brutal double shifts to make absolutely sure I kept the radiator hissing and the lights on during those devastating Chicago blizzards. I loved those kids in the absolute best, most complete way my heart knew how at the time. If your grown children who have their own lives now are actively choosing to punish you today for some clumsy mistake you made 30 long years ago, that is entirely on them. That is their emotional baggage to unpack. And that ain't on your shoulders anymore. You cannot spend the rest of your declining years constantly agonizing and apologizing for a past that has already been written in ink. And you sure as hell cannot keep paying for their forgiveness with your precious dignity today. If they desperately want to hold on to an old dusty grudge, then you step back and you let them hold it. Let me tell you, resentments are a very heavy, exhausting bag to carry around for decades. But the beautiful truth is, you don't got to carry it for them. You need to look in the bathroom mirror tomorrow morning and forgive yourself, man. You fulfilled your societal and biological contract. You did your job. The heavy lifting is done. The foundation is poured, and you deserve to have some quiet peace in your final chapters. Yes, you do. Now, we move on to step two. Step two is crucial. You have to build the garden. I can practically hear you asking me through the screen right now, well, Vernon, if I don't call them, if I don't text them, if I don't check their social media, what on earth am I supposed to do with all these empty, quiet hours in the day? Am I just supposed to sit in this dusty leather recliner, stare at the wall, and write sad journal entries until my heart gives out? No. Absolutely not. You get up out of that chair and you build a garden. My granddaddy Elias, who was a remarkably wise man with hands as tough as leather from working the soil, used to always tell me this story on his front porch. He'd light his pipe and say, Vernon, listen to me. If you spend your entire life frantically running around the yard with a net, sweating and panting, trying to chase a butterfly, that beautiful thing is just going to fly further and further away into the trees. But if you stop running, if you put the net down, get on your knees and dedicate your time to planting seeds, watering the soil, and building a beautiful, vibrant garden, eventually the butterfly will naturally come back to you. And here is the absolute most brilliant, comforting part of my granddaddy's philosophy. Even if that specific butterfly never ever decides to come back, shoot, you still have a beautiful blooming garden to enjoy for yourself. Let me tell you about my own garden. For nearly 5 agonizing years, I sat completely frozen in this exact armchair. I sat here writing down my regrets, drinking too much scotch, just desperately waiting for this piece of glass to light up with a message. Then about 8 months ago, I woke up, looked at the dust gathering on my shoes, and I finally snapped. I said out loud to the empty room, enough is enough. I walked out to the dilapidated, overgrown greenhouse in my backyard. It hadn't been touched since my wife Evelyn passed away a decade ago. I rolled up my sleeves. I cleared out the rot, the dead vines, and the spider webs. I started cultivating rare, complex orchids. I got my bare hands deep into the damp, rich black soil. I felt the cool texture of the earth under my fingernails again. I felt alive. I forced myself out of the front door. I drove downtown and joined the local historical architecture society. I started drinking terrible, bitter coffee from a percolator and arguing fiercely about zoning laws and building preservation with a bunch of other stubborn, loud-mouthed old fools. We debate loudly, we point fingers, we get red in the face, and then we sit back and laugh until our ribs ache and we can barely breathe. I dug into the bottom drawer of the kitchen island and pulled out Evelyn's impossibly complicated stain recipe cards. I started cooking massive, elaborate meals just for myself. I let the smell of roasted garlic, simmering tomatoes, and fresh basil completely fill the empty hallways of this house again. And do you want to know what the magical, undeniable result was? I became an interesting human being again. I stopped being a tragic, weeping figure waiting for a handout, and I actually became genuinely happy in my own skin. I fundamentally stopped needing my children to constantly validate my existence and fill this gaping, this aching hole in my chest. I took responsibility, picked up the shovel, and I filled that hole myself. You have got to get relentlessly, unapologetically busy with your own existence. Go down to the Amtrak station and book a train ticket to a city you've only seen in magazines. Go down to the community college center and learn how to speak conversational Spanish, or how to work a pottery wheel, or how to play the blues on an acoustic guitar. Make your daily life so incredibly full, so vibrant, and so physically exhausting that you don't even notice when this little black phone isn't ringing. Because here's the great, undeniable secret about human nature. Children, no matter if they are 15 or 50, are inherently curious creatures. When the phone finally stops ringing completely, when the subtle passive-aggressive guilt trips absolutely stop, the dynamic fundamentally shifts. They are sitting in their own busy lives, dealing with their own stress, and suddenly they stop and start wondering, wait a minute, it's been a month. Why ain't Dad calling me on Sunday evenings anymore? Is he okay? What in the world is he doing that is suddenly more important than constantly checking in on me? And eventually, yes, eventually, their curiosity wins out over their stubbornness, and they make the call. And when they finally do make that call, or when they finally pull their car up into your driveway and knock on the door, they don't find a pathetic, sad old man sitting alone in a pitch dark living room waiting to die. They open the door and they find a man who is vibrantly, actively living. They find a man with potting soil on his jeans. They find a man with a schedule, a man with plans for the weekend, a man who is completely and utterly at peace with himself. And let me tell you, that kind of independent, strong energy, that is exactly what makes them actually want to pull up a chair and stay. Now, I am reaching the end of my time here with you, but I have got to keep it 100% real before I turn this camera off. I ain't going to sit here, look into this lens and lie to you. I won't promise you a neat, tidy Hollywood ending. The harsh, brutal reality of this world is that sometimes you put in the grueling work, you sweat, you bleed, you build the absolute most magnificent garden on the entire block. And those butterflies still don't ever come back. Sometimes the damage is simply done, the bridges burn to ash, and they are just permanently gone. It is a tragedy, it is heartbreaking, but it happens every single day in towns all across this country. Sometimes folks are just fundamentally selfish, deeply self-absorbed, and yes, that absolutely includes your own kin, your own blood. And if that is the unfortunate, bitter case for you, if you manage to build a beautiful, rich life, if you find your profound inner peace, and they still actively choose to stay away from you, then you must let them go. You have to open your hands, look at the sky, and let them go with a heart full of love. But you absolutely must let them go. You cannot ever force another human being to love you, to respect you, or to want to spend time with you. Not even the ones you helped create. But you do have one ultimate unbreakable power left in your arsenal. You can flat out refuse. You can adamantly, stubbornly refuse to let their prolonged absence completely destroy the final precious years of your life. Your worth as a human being on this earth is absolutely not defined by who decides to conveniently show up to visit you on a Sunday afternoon. You are entirely defined by the resilient, proud, surviving man you see looking back at you in that bathroom mirror every single morning. My phone right here, it ain't rung in over 3 months. And you know what? That is perfectly fine. Because as soon as I turn this camera off, I am walking straight out to the greenhouse. I have a remarkably rare purple cattleya orchid that needs repotting, and it requires my full undivided attention. And after I wash the dirt off my hands, I am going down to the local butcher shop. I am going to buy myself a tremendous thick-cut ribeye steak tonight. I am going to season it perfectly. I am going to pour a heavy glass of red wine, and I am going to live. If my children ever decide They want to join me at my table. The front door is completely unlocked. They are always welcome to pull up a chair. But hear me clearly. I ain't standing out in that freezing doorway waiting for them no more. I am done waiting. And if you are sitting there listening to my voice right now, feeling that ache in your chest, you shouldn't be standing in your doorway neither. Get up out of that chair, man. Wipe your eyes. Go out there. Go live.